Hello everyone and welcome back to Destiny. Yesterday Bungie released a trailer for Curse of Osiris, Destiny 2's first expansion. And in typical Bungie fashion, it is absolutely epic. They're really good at making trailers. Now of course, one of our favorite things to do is to pick apart the trailer piece by piece, and that's exactly what we're going to do right now. There's some really cool things in the trailer, like the new destination, some new gear, and maybe the return of the stranger? Let's get into it. Alright, so the first place I want to stop on is this shot of the Mercury destination. We believe it's called Infinite Forest. A lot of people think Infinite Forest is referring to the name of an activity, but I think it's the name of the destination, kind of like New Pacific Arcology on Titan. Either way, you can notice the absence of sort of like a traditional landmass. There's a lot of these sort of Vex platforms instead. So I think there's going to be a lot of verticality in the exploration of this space, including things like disappearing platforms, man cannons, teleporters, things like that. We also see this later on, but the sky looks like there's some sort of ship or some sort of structure above it, and this part of the skybox definitely looks very different than some of the other angles, as you'll see later on in this trailer. And as we continue through the different shots, you can see kind of what I'm talking about. I don't know if they're fading in and out for the purposes of this video, but I definitely think that this is going to be one of the most intriguing spaces that we've explored so far. So here looks like what might be the surface, the actual surface of Mercury, and it's definitely more in line with what we typically see from Mercury, the warmer colors, the weird spires of light. So it's kind of hard to say if this is just a different section of the Infinite Forest, or if it's maybe reserved for a mission or strike. And here's a look at the new variety of Vex that we're going to be fighting. This is a very interesting looking, what I assume to be a boss. It's super gold plated, and then it has sort of these translucent parts. Definitely looks pretty cool. What I was hoping for were maybe different enemy types, kind of like how they introduced the dogs for the Cabal, but at the very least, I hope they at least switch up some of the abilities just to give it a bit more variety.
Past and future machines are masses. They intend to reshape the universe in their image. But there is one.
So here's our first look at the return of the Lighthouse social space. This time it's going to be a general social space open to everyone. For those of you new to Destiny, the Lighthouse used to be a social space reserved to those who went flawless in Trials of Osiris, but now it's going to be completely open and supposedly filled with maybe vendors, things like that. Also, we see a figure in the back who looks like Brother Vance, so maybe he's making a return in some way. But my main concern is going to be that I hope that the Lighthouse is going to be a space that I need to visit. It's a bit of a shame that the farm is essentially useless right now, so I hope that doesn't carry over to the Lighthouse. Now here's a very interesting shot. It's of the lighthouse, and it's when Ikora is telling us that Osiris has seen a vision of what happens to the lighthouse. The only thing is that this is an in-game shot, and I highly doubt that they would make an in-game shot for just a vision. I personally think that this is going to be some sort of explorable space, perhaps for some sort of story mission. The other interesting thing about this image is that we see what looks like the sun in the background, but it's definitely not orange and bright and lit. In fact, it sort of looks like it might have little sections of landmass, so it's going to be very interesting to see where this story goes.
Our future. He was my mentor. Oh.
Now here we get our first look at Osiris. A few details include, well, his awesome armor. I hope we get something similar to it in-game, but aside from that, we can see he's pretty old, he's a warlock, and he's got a really cool ghost. Here we can get another look at his armor, again very lavish. He was an exiled warlock that used to be part of the tower. If I had to guess, one possibility for the outcome is that we patch things up with Osiris, and because he's so powerful and so knowledgeable, he might actually become the next speaker. We're currently sort of speakerless, so that would definitely work in a sort of world building sort of way.
Most notorious guardian in Vanguard history.
Now, this shot is very interesting. I'm going to spend a little bit of time on here. There's some things in here that might be too much of a reach, but I'm going to go ahead and put them out there anyways. First up, this looks like the Vault of Glass. If you're familiar with the Templars well, this is pretty much where the characters are. The other really interesting thing is that you see a hunter in the background. The only hunter that I know of that is associated with Osiris, at least in the original campaign, is the Stranger. I'm not saying that the Stranger is going to come back, but in the original lore, the Stranger was Osiris's assistant, so it makes a lot of sense. Now, Luke Smith did very heavy-handedly mention that they had no intentions on furthering the Stranger's character, but he did mention that he was also very fascinated at how interested people were in the Stranger, so maybe they worked her back in. We'll find out soon enough. At the very least, it looks like Osiris is fighting through the Vault of Glass. We don't know if that's going to play into the game in any way. I don't think we're going to be going back to Venus, so it's not very likely. This might just be for the cinematic. But either way, it's definitely something to note. Also, during the Destiny 1 campaign, in one of the cutscenes with the Stranger, she had to quickly leave, and from her communications, it sounded like someone was being attacked. Could this be that scene? I think a lot of people would collectively nerdgasm if that ended up being the case.
Once, his dangerous ideas nearly destroyed us, and he was banished. Now he has returned. But will he be a powerful ally, or bring us death?
Here I wanted to stop to show you something we're about to see, but in this shot, Osiris and his ghost are sort of hiding behind this wall, and you can see them looking up at something. And here, I think we're seeing that something's point of view. As you can see, we see that little wall down there in the middle of the circle. We see a figure that looks like Osiris on the little right-hand side of that circle. And then we see a bright white light, which looks to be the ghost. So whoever is looking at Osiris and his ghost is firstly very interested in ghosts, and secondly, massive. I mean, this could be something like Atheon. In fact, it could be Atheon. We could be looking at a scene from the past, or maybe this is the new threat. This could be something like the raid boss. Now, finally, for the rest of the trailer, we see a lot of gear. So first up, we have this sort of controversial shot of the hunter on the left-hand side, and he's wielding what looks like to be a thorn, and a lot of people think the thorn is making a comeback. I personally don't think that's the case. It's not quite the same profile. We also have some people thinking that the Touch of Malice is the scout rifle being used in the middle with the Titan, and it is very convincing. There's that sort of middle section that's missing where the gyroscope thingy is, and then it has the general shape of the Touch of Malice. So we could be going back and grabbing different weapons from different raids. It's definitely very far-fetched, and I think it's just probably another scout rifle of some kind. It could just be ornamentation on the gun, maybe some extra lights or something. It's really hard to tell. Here we have a good look at a new auto rifle. This looks like to be maybe a raid auto rifle or whatever ends up being the endgame activity. We still don't really know. The really interesting thing here is that the Activision blog that shows the new features for this expansion mentions raid content and no other endgame activity, and the phrase raid content has a lot of people scared that there's not going to be an entire new raid, but maybe just an expansion on Leviathan. I hope that's not the case. I hope we get a full raid or a full new PvE activity. It remains to be seen. But either way, we can see that this is one of the new guns from said activity. And here we have the return of the Jade Rabbit Scout Rifle. This was a PlayStation exclusive scout rifle in Destiny 1 that was recently released to Xbox. Here's to hoping that it's not PlayStation exclusive this time around, because I think there would be actual riots. Here's to hoping that it's an energy scout this time around. I think a lot of us are a little disappointed with the Skyburner's Oath and would like a different option for an energy scout rifle. And then next to that, we see the return of Telesto, a fusion rifle from Destiny 1. This is a Void fusion rifle, and I would expect it to behave just like it did in Destiny 1, with those projectiles detonating after they're fired. It's cool to see some of these exotics return. I have no doubt that there's going to be new exotics. I hope they're just going to keep that for us to find out and discover for ourselves. We know there's going to be a world quest added, most likely on Mercury, and I hope that the gun we get from that is something very special, and I hope they don't show us the gun ahead of time. But they probably will. Here we see a shot of a Titan with some pretty cool new armor and a neat looking gun on his back. And from some of the new Crucible footage that we've seen for Curse of Osiris, it seems to be a fast firing rate shotgun. That would make me very happy, especially if it's an exotic. I'm not too keen on the tractor cannon or even the Legend of Acreus. What we saw in that footage is that it is a void shotgun, although we didn't see a unique silhouette, which we typically see with exotics, so it could just be a legendary. Here we see a pretty cool shot of Guardians running down this hallway. Since we see this in the end of the trailer, I think it might be belonging to maybe the final story mission or maybe a strike. I would say raid, but there's only 3 people, and they typically show 6 when there is raid footage. Now here we see another trace rifle. It looks different than the Cold Heart, and as you'll see in a moment, it looks like it shoots solar. We also see a pretty cool shot of a new Warlock helmet. Again, we don't know how you would attain this armor. It could be Eververse, it could be endgame related, we still don't know. I just hope that Bungie clears the air as far as what the endgame activity is going to be in the first stream. If they don't, there's going to be a lot of people that are not only going to be upset, but are going to start jumping to negative conclusions, and Bungie doesn't want that. So I hope that they reveal it in the first stream. And here is what very clearly looks like solar being shot out of the gun. I know that arc and void can be very easily confused for one another depending on the lighting, but solar usually stands out. So this is definitely solar. I also believe that it's exotic. I don't think they're at the stage yet where they want to introduce the legendary trace rifles, so I would expect it to fit into that energy slot yet again.
You are the one thing they have not foreseen.
Here we see another shot of the new Titan armor. It looks very similar to the Crucible set. In fact, I think he might be wearing a Crucible helmet, but either way, the rest of the armor looks pretty cool. And it's nice to see a piece that doesn't have gigantic shoulders, so this is definitely a nice change.
Go to Mercury and find Osiris. Time is not on.
Here again, we can get a sense of the massive scale for this space. We see a central spire here, but if you look in the distance, there are some what looks like playable space. There are some skybox stuff further beyond it, but the more gold, warmer colored spaces, I think, are actually platforms that you can jump between. So I think this sort of reinforces that the playable space is not going to be your traditional open plains, go through tunnels thing. I think this is going to be very modular, and I hope that they manage to tuck away some secrets for us to discover.
Our side.
Get the expansion pass now. 2 all-new expansion.
And that brings us to the end of the trailer. We have the artwork for the expansions now available to us. We can see the first one is of Osiris, and the second one is what a lot of people, including myself, think is a character called Anna Bray. Her and her family go back as far as the Golden Age. They've done things like researching Rasputin and things like Siva. In fact, in that shot, we can see a structure which looks very similar to the Siva replication chamber in Rise of Iron, so it'll be very interesting to see where this expansion goes. If you want to know more of my thoughts on the second expansion, I did have some brief thoughts in my previous video on just the trailer itself, so definitely check that out. I'll leave a link down below. Either way, let me know if there's anything else in the trailer that you noticed that I missed. Do you think we'll be seeing the Stranger? Is that a little too far-fetched? Let's discuss. Drop a like if you enjoyed this video, and subscribe for more Destiny content. And I will see you all next time.